All right, hey, thanks for tuning in on this Friday's Hack and Play. So every Friday, I pick something to mess around with. And on this Friday, what I'm going to do is I had a call with somebody and they wanted to improve the user interface for Drupal Commerce in the condition selector. So once my environment gets rolling, I accidentally turned it down and I got to turn it back up. I'll show what I want to work with. So right now, Drupal Commerce has different conditions that you use for promotions, if a shipping method applies, if a payment gateway is enabled, all it's used in all those areas. And the right now it's kind of like everything is out there. You can't do a here we go. You can't do like a add and keep on increasing them. It's like a very open form that can be kind of confusing. And want to see if we can work on a way to improve it. So let me log into my test site. Oh, of course. The page is not found. Let's do ddev drush ULI so I can get access and logged in real quick. Ever since the latest version of Docker came out, it's like performance was good, and then it went down. I don't use dark mode in PHP Storm. Yeah, I realized I did, but I used light mode in Golang or for Goland. I used light mode for Java work. I used light mode in IntelliJ period because of using Rust and Java. WebStorm was light mode, and like PHP Storm was the only thing I still had in dark mode. And I was like, why? Why do I have it in dark mode still when I use everything else in light mode? Like I think the only reason I use dark mode is from back when using Aptana back in the day. But I found out dark mode just it hurts my eyes. I can't do dark mode, so I'm one of those people where I can't do the dark mode. All right. So now that I'm logged in, let me actually explain the conditions UI that we're talking about here. And when speaking about it, we were talking about it specifically with promotions. So let's see. Let me show what's going on here. So we have all these conditions right here, where customer is by customer ID. You toggle this, and you can select different customers, and the promotion will only be available for that customer. Well, then you could say customer role, and then down here it says all conditions must pass. So you can like shoot yourself in the foot really easily, because let's say that you must be logged in to get this role, and the products must be of a certain type and clothing. And you see here it just says restricted, but it's really hard to get an overview. So one idea was to copy from Drupal Commerce 7, which we used rules, is to build like a table. So you would have a list of the conditions that are applied and have an add button to begin adding them and edit them in line. As you can see, this order contains product types, order contains product variation types. These are actually redundant because usually your product type has the same variation type. So some of these, like the checkbox, I want to see if there's a way that we can improve it. For those who did not know this, the promotion entity, this is a promotion entity, and this is actually a field widget. So we can go in and we can check out how that field widget is built, which means that we can also swap it out. So this doesn't need to be a patch for Commerce Core. It could actually be a contrib module that provides a different user interface. So if we go to promotion, into source, because it's a field widget, so it's a plugin underneath field widget. It's not a field widget. Hold on. Entity, promotion. Let's look at how this is defined. Since it's a base field, it's defined inside the entity definition at base field definitions. So we've got name. It's the offer field. So let's go look for order type, stores, offer. Oh, wait, no, sorry, that's not the offer. This is the offer. We need to look at the conditions. Conditions is the commerce conditions plugin or widget type, because it is used in other places. So that's why it's in the root module. I know this because I helped write it, but just based off the namespace in Drupal, a lot of things are always namespaced by the module. So this would be like commerce promotion conditions if it was in the commerce promotion module. So since it's commerce underscore, it's really easy to assume that it's inside the commerce module. So if I go to plugin, field widget, conditions widget, and here we go. So the idea is that we're going to create a new module, which creates a different widget, and we swap out the default widget. So let's go start there. Well, first I'll just quick show this, and then we'll go through. So settings form, entity types. Oh, this is for the different entities that it supports. So you'll see here, type form, settings, entity type. So it only shows conditions that target orders. And then settings summary, which we can't see this because we don't have the field UI exposed for promotions. And then here's the form element, get all the values. And then it builds the element type of commerce conditions. So that means this is actually a good thing, because we're going to reuse or leverage this element possibly whenever we can. Oh, actually, no, we may not, because this provides the vertical tabs. So the widget is a pass through to this form element, and this form element is also used when we configure shipping methods and taxes. So if we go to a shipping method, well, shipping methods are content entities, so it's the same thing. If we go to tax types, inside, it's not inside tax types. Sorry, payments. Payment, there's payments, payment gateways. So if we edit a payment, the conditions here are the same form element. So we're going to, if we want to do this, we technically need to make a whole different element as well, but we'll just kind of take some baby steps along the way. So to get started, I'm going to create a new module. Let's call it Commerce Conditions Plus, because, you know, this plus, I like to put plus instead of extras. In Drupal, it's common for people to be like, oh, blah, 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 extras, because it's a bunch of random extra stuff, but I like plus. So we'll do info.yaml. Name, this is all the boilerplate stuff. Make your chat go away. I don't know how. I haven't spent a lot of time figuring out how to. You want me to purge the chat? I can't do it. Hold on. So while something loads onto the side, so we got that. We have to give it the type. It's a module. It's core.8.x, but also something else. There you go. I made your chat go away. So core.x, but there's actually a proper, there's some more things to do into it. Here we go. We want to take this. So for those who are curious, this is my commerce2.x environment that has been alive since, let's see. I think I saw 2016. Yeah, or wait, yep. No, wait, this isn't showing the year. Oh, no, it is. Yeah, so 2016 is when I first created this Drupal Commerce 8, or this Drupal 8 site, and it has served me since. All right, so we've got the type module, dependencies. The only dependency is on commerce, and we're going to namespace it. This is an interesting just Drupalism in dealing with dependencies, because we have sub packages. So this commerce has the commerce module, but also a collection of sub packages. And this is just a way of saying that the commerce module as part of the commerce project. So we're going to create a new. I'm going to do source. If you just do new file, we'll do source plugin field widget, and we're going to call it commerce conditions, or we'll call it conditions table, because we want to try to build like a table that people can work with where they add in the conditions instead of it being just everything at once. Let's declare namespace is Drupal commerce conditions plus. This is, I should be one of those people that starts using code generators for Drupal, but I don't. Actually, I don't, since this will be an up contrib possibly, I don't want to make it final. So we'll extend, I don't want to extend the conditions widget. Or actually I do, but I'll just override the form element because I want to respect all these settings and not necessarily have to recreate that. So let's extend the conditions widget. And I know I want to override the form element because we're going to completely destroy the way that it handles things. But yeah, so I'm going to keep it as it just does a raw return to show that it's working. So we're going to call this commerce conditions plus is what we'll name the widget. And we'll call it commerce conditions plus conditions table. This is a mouthful of a machine name, but no one actually sees that. Conditions table, multiple values is true. I'm going to copy the inherit doc, although this is just warning me that it's a frivolous overload because we didn't change anything yet. All right, so we're going to save that. And the next thing to do, is, like I said, for promotions, we can't edit the UI for promotions to change the field widget that's used. So we'll do it ourselves in our module. We'll create a new file, commerce conditions plus.module. And the hook here is, so I have PHP Storm, which will suggest different hooks. So we have base field info alter. So what we want to do is we're going to alter the base field here. So we are going to alter the default definition. Maybe in the future this could be a setting, but for now it's just going to be that way. So we'll say that if entity type ID is equal to commerce promotion, then fields, which if we go to, why isn't it showing me where? Usually it has a little up arrow. That brings you to the definition. Fields, here we go. I want to copy that so I can type hint. That fields are our field definition interface. So there's conditions. So if I go to promotion, we had conditions, and we're going to modify this set display options. So this hook entity base field info alter allows you to alter the values that are returned from an entity's base field definitions. So we're going to modify the display options to be our commerce conditions table. And what we'll do before we even try to flush the cache is we're going to write a test, because I love tests. So we're going to not minimize PHP Storm. I'm going to make a new file called test source, and this would be a kernel test because we need some level of the Drupal system to be bootstrapped. We're going to call it base field info alter test to verify that our alter is actually doing what we expect it to do. And all tests in Drupal belong in a module inside test source, and then it's either unit, kernel, functional, or functional JavaScript. So the namespace is Drupal /tests / commerce conditions plus kernel. And we'll have this extend the commerce kernel class. Actually, it needs to extend the, we'll see if promotions has a base kernel test, because we need to end up installing that module anyways. Hey, I'm glad that you like the selling video files stream. I want to do a few more of those like how to do things. But this came up and it found it really interesting. It was like, I want to try to flip between how to do things and how to customize things. And this seemed like a really cool one for how to customize, because it's going to cover test-driven development. It's going to cover form API. It's going to cover field widgets. You know, if you work with Drupal Commerce and try to contribute to it or just extend it, you're going to touch every single API there is in Drupal and flex all the muscles it takes to be like a really good Drupal Commerce or Drupal developer as well. It has put me through my paces. It's given me lots of headaches and sorrow, but at the same time, it has made me a really strong developer, because it has put up a lot of challenging things that we have had to accomplish. So we have here promotion test. It extends order kernel test and just enables the module. Well, I guess we'll do the same. So we'll say order kernel test. I wonder why it requires the order. Oh, because it requires an order to exist. All right, we'll just do that. So now let's do public function test. Widget is set. We'll just make a test that asserts that our widget is set. And we, of course, need to install our own module. In a kernel test, nothing is assumed by default. You have to manually say what projects or what dependencies get installed. So let's do a, let's see, it's this container get entity field manager. For anybody who is curious, the plugins that I use to make PHP Storm work the way it is I highly recommend getting the Drupal Symphony Bridge and Symphony support. That's what's allowing me to do this autocomplete on the service container and jump between things. See here, the cog brings me to where it's defined in the services.yaml. It's also allowing me to get autocompletes from here. So base field definitions from commerce promotion. So I highly recommend that. We're going to call this we'll say base fields. So I'm not sure the cost of PHP Storm anymore, because I have been paying for the toolbox for the past, well, I've been paying for PHP Storm for 6 years, and the toolbox since they came out with like the subscription option. So I think I'm only paying like $200 a year to have access to IntelliJ Ultimate, PHP Storm, WebStorm, Golang, all of those, and DataGrip for like database manipulation. So that $200 a year, well, it makes me at least 2 hours more productive a week, pays for itself. And if you're not, maybe your organization could work out a license deal, because organizations can't reimburse for a license. They have to buy a business licensing pool to meet the license requirements. So we have our base fields here, and we're going to get the offer, or sorry, I keep wanting to say offer. So it's conditions field equals base fields, conditions. And we're going to assert that conditions field is an instance of base field definition. And we'll do conditions field get display options for form. And actually we'll do a self assert equals so there's the actual, and the expected would be, I'm just going to copy this value and we'll see if it's right. There might be like some extra processing that gets added. So that's our test right here. Test the widget is altered. And if I just load up my PHP unit real quick, It's already configured to go to SQLite for the test database. In my PHP setup, I have my test framework set up where PHP unit is pointed to the right autoloader in the config. And this allows me to just run a play button to test it. So I just want, before I even like clear the cache, I just want to see if this worked. Because this is a lot easier than running a cache rebuild, saying like, is the form showing or not? So that's why I find high value in test-driven development, because it is a lot faster and a lot more confident. It's just as you start to have bigger projects with more dependencies installed, it gets kind of funky. All right, so it passed. Now, if we were to, I didn't write the test before I added the code, which usually I like to write a test first to assert things. So I'm just going to make a typo here and my test should fail. If my test doesn't fail, then I've got a problem. One of the things about tests is they just prove your own assumptions. So you always wanted to get it to fail to make sure it's actually failing when it's supposed to, which is why you usually write tests first. Like here, I made the typo and we can see that the actual is still commerce conditions. So we know it's working. That means I can do a ddev drush cr, which is drush. It's a shortcut to do a drush cache rebuild, which will purge all the caches inside Drupal, like the entity definitions and the plugins that are available. Though I shouldn't have even done that because I need to install my module, and that would have done the same thing. So what I'm going to do is copy this, do Control-C to kill that, and I'm going to enable my module. And then we're off to the races for customizing the field, or for customizing the form. And I'm first going to work on it inside of the field widget for promotions, and then we can think about creating our own element that replaces the existing element. So with Drupal, we have form elements. Well, there's various elements. There's form elements and render elements. And then when you work with the entity system and content entities, you have field widgets which return form elements. So it's abstracted in the commerce conditions is abstracted into that core element. So that way we can reuse it in any form, but it's also mapped to field widgets via that field widget. All right, so that was successfully enabled. And when I go edit a promotion, we should see no change because I am just returning the parent field directly. That's going to take a minute or a second to reload. So let's go to this $3 off one again. And let's see. So I'm going to copy some of this code. I'm going to start copying some of this code. An element form, it gets the conditions, it gets the values, the parent entity type, and entity types, and if it's required. We might need to override this massage form values. Values in form. Or I wonder if we should just, you know what? I actually have a different idea on how to approach this. I'm going to ignore that. But if we go in, so we'll just first do let me turn on Xdebug. So with ddev Xdebug, if you use Lando, they have their own instructions. If you're using any other local environment, it's, most things make it fairly easy in a local development stack to turn it on and off. So I'm going to refresh the page, and with Xdebug on, I should hit this breakpoint. And I do. Great. So that means I know things have been swapped. What I want to do, I realize, is instead of rebuilding this widget, I should just make a new element and I can reuse a lot of this common data. So what I'm going to do is go into, we'll say this is the element equals And we're going to say element form type. Oh, this is another awesome plugin for PHP Storm. It's autocomplete. It is, I don't know how it exactly works, but it's inspecting the parent calls and it knows what array items have been set. So type, I'm going to change the type to be not commerce conditions, but commerce conditions table. So we're going to make a new element. We'll return the element. That plugin is from the Deep Assoc Completion. This is like the best plugin out there. I need to see if they have a GitHub sponsorship, because it definitely deserves some money thrown at them. Definitely use that on the daily a lot. So the problem is that I kind of just shot myself in the foot, because if I refresh this page and turn off Xdebug, it's going to throw a 500 error because that element doesn't exist, because I decided to change my mind at the last minute on how I want to implement this. Okay, it didn't error, it just didn't render anything. I thought it would throw an exception if there's an invalid render element. I guess it does not. So let's start building our custom element. So just to recap, because I know I kind of adjusted my gears a little bit. So we created a new field widget, and our module is swapping the default field widget that Commerce provides. By default, it has its own conditions. This is saying, nope, use my other field widget. And this way, we're not altering the existing Commerce code. We could swap out those plugin classes, but we're instead just saying like, no, use this. So this is using our new field widget. And what it's going to do is it's going to try to respect all of the parent items, but just change the element to our new element type. So let's open up the original element so we can kind of copy it, or at least borrow things from it. I'm actually not sure how feasible any of this is going to be, but I wanted to give it a shot. So render elements are technically plugins, but they're in source element. So we have conditions here. This is the element. Commerce element trait. Oh yeah, attach element, submit. We've had to do, this is all some magic from Boyan, because once you get nested so far down into elements and other things inside the form API, things get weird. So this is a substitute for like an element submit that's missing from Drupal core. If you're curious, you can read down into all this code. But we're going to now create our own form element called commerce conditions table. So I'm going to get back into my main area. So it's source. So we'll do element conditions table. So again, our field widget is just a way to map and bring in this new element. Just do namespace, commerce conditions plus, and it's in the element namespace, not final. If you catch me writing final, I've started to write that with all of my code is as final classes. So that way, if I ever try to extend it or mock it in a test, it makes me ask a question of like, why? Why am I trying to extend this, or why do I have to? And if I need to mock this, should I make an interface for it, or why does it need to be mocked? Does it have too many dependencies? So it causes you to have conversations with your architecture and code, which is something that I learned from Mateo and Gabe and Wim with JSON API, the contrib module, now the module in core. So kudos to them. I was always having to try to customize form JSON API. 1 second, form element. I was always having to customize JSON API. They had a bunch of stuff private, internal, final, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, but it let them work fast and quick on a concrete implementation and then open up the API as it was needed. And ask like, why do you need to do this? And it made me come up with my own, use cases. Like I had to answer like, why should I be doing this? Instead of just off to the races, hack it in. And then next thing you know, maybe it wasn't the greatest idea. All right, so commerce conditions table. That's what we have mapped in here. So the get info, actually we want to make sure we use commerce element trait. This helps handle Ajax requests inside of sub elements. And I'm going to copy the entire info because we're going to use basically the same thing. And let's see. So process conditions. We'll copy build element name, Ajax refresh, submit conditions, clear form values. All right. Let's start with, we're going to copy this process conditions. Normally I might read over a few things, but I'm just going to roll with it. Default value. So what is this doing with the grouped definitions? So this is, okay, so it's using the group definitions to build out the tab. We don't necessarily want that. We do want this after build to clear values. This is a bug fix for when a plugin gets disabled. Actually, no, because we're not going to have a wide open array that clears out the value. So what this does is when we're on, this is broken, when we're editing a payment gateway, so that clear values, with how Drupal works, is it's going to retain the user inputs, like the post data. It holds on to that when something disappears. So this clear values is a trick that we use in a few places to handle when you turn off a condition. So in here, we've enabled a condition. Man, this is poker. So what it does, so right, I picked the value and I turned off the value. It prevents that data from continuing to persist. So I don't necessarily need that. And I think I'm just going to start going with it. So let's see how we can roll with this. So default value. We have the plugin manager. We need to get all the definitions. So we will copy this. Or maybe not in here. Let's just return element. And we have to do a full cache rebuild because there's no way to easily just invalidate that plugin manager. And we'll start building out our form. We'll copy. We'll adjust the element name here. So I'm envisioning we need to have a table and then an add button. And when you click add, it shows a form that lets you pick the type of plugin. So we'll start there. So actually, you know what we can do is let's get the grouped definitions. We'll copy this. And I'm going to put a breakpoint so that way I can inspect what the results are. So I'm thinking that the first step is a select list where we pick the plugin and then an add button. And you click add and that will add it to the table and allow you to configure it. So oh man, I should have Xdebug 3 going. I don't understand why this is being such a bear. Although there's probably a lot of random modules installed on this site. Like I said, it is a old site. Let me just do Xdebug off. Could also just be, oh, my computer hasn't been on too long. A day. let's do a cache rebuild. And while that's going, and since it's taking a bit, let's just start working on our form. So we have element categories, all the conditions. So we're just adding it into the different element and states. So let's do element, and we'll call it add new, or call it conditions list. It's going to be type of a select, and we know our options. So I'm pretty sure with how these are grouped, group definitions, it's returning the entire definition. So we don't actually want to be, we want to change how we're grouping this. So category, no, wait, we don't. Definition, we'll do definition label. And let's see there. All right, cache rebuild complete, Xdebug on, and hopefully things will get moving a little bit faster now. All right, so let's give it a title. We'll say its title is condition. We'll call it select a condition, and there's a option of title display, which we can do invisible. And this option here allows you to decide how the element's displayed, and invisible is just, well, doesn't show. So we've got Xdebug back on. Let's go ahead and refresh this form. All right, so let's see. I want our grouped definitions. Customer order. All right, so if I hit play and we let this finish loading, we should see a select list that's grouped by the different categories. The only thing that might be awkward is this radio button, because that's not inside of the form. It's actually something that's configured on the promotion once we get this added. But we'll see. It's not this new form won't allow like grouping things into ands and ors. Right, so perfect. So it did group it. What I want to add is there is an option called empty option, and let's pick choose. And when we add this choose, so right now it defaulted the customer ID, which was kind of awkward because we didn't know what that meant. So now it defaults to choose, and now we can pick, customer ID, order currency, and product variation type. So now what we're going to call this is, let's actually wrap this under add new. We're going to do element add new equals, so we're going to call it a container. And I believe we can do an attribute called container inline. I think this is a class that's used in Drupal. Yep. So we could do type details. Let's actually do type details. Why not? Let's call it type details. And we'll say it's actually, I want the wrapper to be like that. So we're going to leave this, and so we have add new, and let's do an element add new. We have add condition. So this would be a button with title of add. We're going to make it do Ajax. And for the life of me, I can never remember how to define that. So here we go. We're going to copy it from here because the life of developer is copy and paste and knowing what to copy and paste and when to. So Ajax Wrapper, this is a common trick that you need to add to most of your, when using Ajax is always using knowing the wrapper so that way you can pass it to your Ajax callback so it knows what it needs to replace. You can hear, oh, so this actually adds a prefix before it, but we will do element. We're going to say element prefix. So yeah, we'll copy. No, we're not going to copy that exactly. We'll just copy this part. So element prefix equals this, and then we're going to do element suffix equals this closing div, and I'll refresh and show what this fully means in a second. So we've got the callback, the refresh. Let's copy the refresh here because it's something that's been copied over and over. So when you define an Ajax element, you have a callback, and that is intended to return parts of the form that have been refreshed. So in here, we're getting the triggering element, which would be the button. We're getting its array parents, so that way we can know like its path in the form. And we're saying pop one off because we want to get the level above the the element. So I'm going to pop a breakpoint here to just show what happens. And we need to add a submit callback, which would be something like after build, validation, Ajax refresh, recalculate. That's not what I want. I want its own submit, and maybe it is just submit. Yeah. So we'll do a shorthand with the colon is the same as this. We could do here and it would determine it, but we'll make it say static class and add new condition. And it should complain that this doesn't exist, and I was hoping it would do a prompt for me to create the function. So let's create it. So it'd be public string public static function, and it's going to be past the form and the form state. I just know this from time and time again of doing it. It's probably documented somewhere. So I'm going to do a stop null here. And for those who haven't caught, I do this often whenever so you can't put a breakpoint on empty code lines. So my habit is doing stop equals null, and that gives you somewhere to put a breakpoint on, and it's non-disruptive code. So it won't break your site if you accidentally commit it. Unlike for all the Drupal developers that have left DPM codes in your code and then you deploy it to production on accident and your site crashes because the devel module is not installed and you have to rush to hotfix it. So I'm going to refresh this form. We'll see that we've got our element. I'm going to press play. So by adding a wrapping container and doing inline, it should have made it more inline, but there's some kind of extra, there's some extra styling that's conflicting with it. Oh, there we go. Once I actually had the value in. So that's why I did inline. So if we go in and look, and if I remove, let me pop this down lower. So if I, so if I remove inline, you'll see that it's no longer inline. That's just a little helper class inside Drupal. You'll also see, where is the conditions form? where is the, oh shoot, we don't want to do it for the plugin ID. We want to say the ID is the conditions table. So let me refresh. And so here I realize that, this has something had, it said like order ID in here. So we should see that. Here's our ID, Ajax Wrapper conditions table. So now whenever we make an adjustment, it's going to replace this entire element, which is exactly what we want. We want every change to replace that, this wrapping part. So if I click add, you can see that it called the Ajax refresh. Element parents is conditions widget form add new. So let's map this to have it make sense. First, let's go to the form state. We'll look at the triggering element and its array parents, which is conditions add new add condition. Add condition is the name of the actual button, which is why we popped one off. Technically, we need to do this at -2 because we don't want add new, but this maps into, it's like the parents, the array parents is like the property path, like you would do with JSON. So conditions, let's see, right? We have conditions widget form add new. If you didn't know this, you could click in and kind of get an expanded. So we have conditions, which then goes to the widget, which is then into form and add new. But really we want to return this entire form. So I'm going to do a stop to kill that. And we're going to change this to 2. And I should be able to just re-click this button. And element parents, this is the form. If I step into here and I kind of go through this nested get form value, the ref, we can see is the form. And if I step through all this, it's going to render that response. And it didn't do anything because we made no changes. The one somewhat concern that I have is it didn't call my add new condition. And I wonder if it's because I have it as type button. And I need to make it actually be type submit. And there's all these little details that I can never quite remember. So I'm going to do double shift on, look at button and look at the render element. Render element, execute submit callback is false. Now, if we go to submit, it's true. So yes, in order to handle submit callbacks, I need to make it a submit button. Submit. So that means now my little submit definition here will be called. And we'll roll through. Actually, one thing I want to check is, so forms can have their own submit and validations, and then each submit button can have their own validations as well. And I want to see if there is an example of that in here. It just says limit validation errors, which I do want to limit. All right, let's refresh this page. Technically, you shouldn't be able to click add until you choose, and maybe we can use that with Drupal states. So if I click add, we're now in this add new condition. So let's do this trick to get the parents, and we'll do values equals form state get value. And value takes either a single string or it takes an array as like a subpath. So if you do a lot of JavaScript, think of like underscore, how it does like underscore dot get, and you can pass it like my dot prop dot name, and it can chain down and go fetch that. It's the same concept as those underscore helpers. Not underscore. Yeah, underscore or low dash. That's it. Yeah, low dash. They both use an underscore. One's called underscore and one's called low dash. So we're going to do element parents, and we'll need to trigger a form state rebuild. Why can't is rebuilding set rebuild? Because we're going to modify some of the state data and we say, hey, before you call our Ajax callback, rebuild the form. So I'm going to hit stop again so that way we can click the button. Now we're here. If we look at values, they were null. Element form widget. Form, so maybe, oh, it didn't even pull in. So I wonder if, let's look at, I want to look at the form state because we should have a value for this conditions list. So let's look at, not the form, we'll go to form state, values. Oh, if you don't use Xdebug yet, I really hope this is showing why it's useful. It makes it a lot easier. Yes, you can be a PHP developer without using Xdebug. You can do all this, but it makes it so much easier. So as we can see, there is no value. So I want to add some guardian into there. And Drupal ships with this states API. And the states API, it's really awesome. So as you see, we're writing JavaScript execution via PHP code. And this dates back to, I believe, like Drupal 6 had this. And it's pretty amazing that you're able to build these kind of reactive forms without writing any JavaScript. So states, I can never remember it off the top of my head. We don't want visible. I think you can do disabled. So form helper, visible, invisible. So a lot of times I go through I find like anything that's defined states and I check to see any examples, and looks like it's just visible. So we're gonna take something with this. We're gonna borrow one and we're gonna mess with it. So I want to say value. Okay, so let's take the states definition, an input name. Let's find out this input name because it's using jQuery in the front. So the input name is conditions form, add new conditions list. So if input name value equals, we want it to actually not just equal a value, we want it to be not empty. So maybe there's a way. So the select value checked, there's a way. Oh, so we can do not visible. Okay, so we can do a, so we could do not, let's try this. Let's do not disabled. Or we'll there we go. My brain had to think for a second. So what we want to do is we want to say that the button is disabled if the conditions list is equal to a nil value. And one thing we could do to double check if disabled's allowed or not is go to core. Let's go to miscellaneous and states. So all of Drupal's JavaScript that's not provided by a module is inside the misc folder. States. Let's look at the ES6 because that's easier to read, at least to me, than it is to reading the transpiled gobbledygook. Because not all browsers support ES6 code. Most do. I've been writing ES6 code in all my projects, and only if they have IE11 do things break. So compare. Let's look at behavior states. So this is what's reading all the data. I want to look for disabled. If I can type disabled. Aliases, so enabled. All right, so it looks like document on state disabled. Looks like it should be supported. So let's refresh this form. Definitely was not disabled because I was able to click on it. So here's Drupal states disabled if input value is equal to empty. What is the input value? want to check this. Oh, we got an error. Oh, maybe that's why. Unrecognized expression input. Oh, yep. Well, that would do it. I didn't create a proper name condition. So let me take this, and in my console, hold on. Oh, because it's not an input. Apparently, it even remembered some JavaScript stuff from my last live stream on Wednesday when trying to do some stuff. I didn't know it went that far back. So here we go. We have select. If you didn't know, the double $ is a built-in to most browsers. It's like doing document.query selector, but it actually returns a full array instead of a node list. So that's like doing document.query selector all, which is a pain to write out. Again, I even typed it wrong here. So the double $ is the same as here, but see how it's a node list? So you'd have to do, it actually returns a full array instead of it being a node list, which is not an array. Nice little helper inside the console. So this is the proper selector. So let's copy that, replace this, refresh the form. Syntax unsupported pseudo. Oh, shoot. There. All right. After stumbling a bit, our add button is disabled. But if I pick customer role, it's not. So let me pop back on the Xdebug and see if we get some values now and add new condition. So let's click add. Values are still null from the array parents. Oh, because we picked array parents, but that's actually not right. We want to, so let's look at our form state. Oh, that's right, because we're picking, so array parents is if you're fetching from the form, but actually, if you're getting values from the form state, you want, let me find it, in triggering element, it is just parents. Here's the difference. Conditions, form, add new condition. There's no widget. Widget is just something in the form array. It's not actually passed or used in any of the input names. So let me change this here. So again, for anybody else that's working on like Form API and Ajax, array parents is what you want if you're fetching data from the form array. Parents is what you want when you're fetching data from form state. Because they're two different array structures sometimes. So there's that. Now let's click add. And our values, we have add new, condition, add. Why? Add new, condition, add. Why is there no value from the conditions list? Form state, values, conditions, form. Oh. Come on now. Type select. 1 second. I'm going to see if I did anything silly here. So we have options, title display, default value. That shouldn't matter if we don't have a default value. But just in case. Because the next step is we can't really have a form unless we get conditions to show up. And again, it's not showing in there, but if I go to form state and I do input, so values are the values that Drupal has processed. And then input is the actual like post data. So offer, not offer, conditions, form, add new, conditions list. So why is it? Oh, you know what? Because I think when a button, shoot, I think when a button submits the form, it only submits its data. So I want to, let's see. This is again where now I need to go dig in and see what's happening in core. So there was one in file element. So I'm really curious here. So we've got the upload button, the name, type submit, upload, validate. So maybe let's try this. So let's do values here, and to do add a validation on the selected condition plugin ID. Because just because we have states doesn't mean that somebody can't change it or work around it, or an accident happens and they submit this. But then it does submit is file element parents. I wonder if, let's copy this, and maybe that's one reason why, because limit validation errors. I know this can do a few things. So form builder. So if processing input, validate form, do submit form. Yeah, this is, you know what? Why don't we drop a breakpoint in here too, and we can walk through this. I have walked through this code far too many times than I wish I ever did. Manage files. So let's look at, so it has this, look at manage file submit. That's not in here because that's a function inside file.module. So parents, the button key, pops that off element. So we get the element from there. If it's the remove button, else, no, form state rebuild. Well, that didn't help out too much, but let's just refresh and see where we get. It's been a while since I've had to do this, and I feel like every time I add form Ajax, I know the bugs that send me in a 4-hour rabbit hole, but I still stumble on parts as I go. And I just don't know why it's not passing in the select button. But hopefully by dropping a breakpoint on the form builder, we can get some more data. So we got customer ID. We add it. So now let's go through here, buttons. We've got 2 buttons. We got add and we've got submit. And luckily we already know the triggering element. So validate form. So weird things happen, not weird things, things happen inside the form state or the validate form that I maybe should have run through. But let's look at form state, our values, conditions, form, add new. All right, so now we have the 2 items. So maybe by changing the form validation, like the validator might limit the scope of the values, and that's why it wasn't coming through, because now we have it here. So who knows? I'm going to change this back to 1 so we don't have to worry about this add new. Let's hit stop. Let's click add. I don't want a breakpoint here anymore. So now our values, we have conditions list. Perfect. So we have the condition list. So let's do a where did my thing go? Debug. Oh, debug. So what I want to do is we will have a, let's do, we're going to create a new form state storage item. So let's do get conditions, condition plugins. Call this conditions. And I'm kind of winging it right now. So we're going to do conditions. We're going to add a new array item. We'll say target plugin ID equals values conditions list, which maybe that should be changed like condition ID, because that doesn't really make too much sense. And we'll call it target plugin configuration, because I'm pretty sure that's what the form is called. Yep. And that's an empty array. And now we'll do condition, we'll do form state set condition plugins. Oh, need the actual value. So let's stop this. And now we're going to try something else. So what we're doing is in our submit, we're going to manipulate the form state and then tell the form state to rebuild, which means it will come back and it is going to build our form and we'll be aware of any changes in the form state. Without set rebuild, our form would end up being called and then pass the Ajax refresh without these values being respected. So now we're going to go into here and let's just check this out. So if I go to stop null, and since it doesn't allow you to provide a default, get just returns the property, which could be null. If it doesn't exist, we want it to default to an array. So I'm gonna go ahead and refresh this form. We'll see that conditions is an empty array. And if all goes right, we'll be able to choose customer ID, click add. Conditions, it came back with our form because every time the form is processed, it gets built, submitted, then possibly rebuilt. Our conditions, we now have it in there. I took off the breakpoint here. And then an Ajax refresh is going to return our form. So let's go ahead now. And what we'll do is let's create a table that will show our conditions. So we'll do element and we'll call it conditions. Right now, what I'm going to do is this is bugging me. Let's call it, let's call this condition ID and change it anywhere I referenced it here. So that way it still works. So we have conditions ID. Now we're going to make a table. So type is table. I can never remember what this looks like. So let's look at the render element. So we've got header, rows, empty. Let's copy this. So header would be condition name. Let's call it operations. I'm not sure what's going to go into there, but rows we're going to leave there. No conditions will be applied. We'll just say that's the wording there. Wording is hard. All right, so there. So what we should do now is for each conditions as condition, something like that. We'll do element conditions rows. We'll add a new one. And we'll do we have the plugin manager? Great, we do. So definitions, we should be able to, as condition ID, condition configuration. Let's just do, I think it would be, let's just have it be condition ID. We'll get the proper label in there in a second. I'll move my stop into here. And let's just refresh this page really quick. So condition name, no conditions will be applied. Let's do customer ID. Let's click add. All right, so condition ID is 0. Oh, that's right. I have it set where, so the reason I have it set this way is we want to allow multiple of the same condition. So that way you could set up an OR that it has, that it's like these 3 customers get access to it. Right now, you can't do that. You can only set it to be like 1 customer. So let's call it condition as conditions, which then it would be condition target plugin ID. But first, definitions. We have the definitions here. So what we can do is we go to definitions, the plugin ID, and label. Oh, there's a display label. So let's do that. Let's do display label. Stop. I'm going to drop the breakpoint real quick. And let's refresh. I probably could have just clicked add again, but I want to be doubly sure. And so if we pick customer role, we click add. We now have customer role and operations. That's where we would do like the configuration. Let's just do billing address. So now we are able to start putting data into here. The big ticket item will be getting the values out of here. But this is a start. So we have our add new condition. Let's look at conditions here. So submit conditions. Whereas this is where we can then set the value for the element. So one thing we could do, element categories as category ID, plugin element, plugin values, get the value, if enable, get the, yeah, we don't necessarily want this. So let's look up at this submit conditions. What we'll do is we'll copy that button, or that method at least, and see, we have set value for element. So value, and what we would just do is actually value would be the value is would be this conditions. So let's I'm going to do stop equals null. And just for kicks, I'm going to try saving this. Now this is all invalid. Like this is no good for data wise, but element. So let's do parents. So let's extract the values. Do values equals form state, or no, we wouldn't even do that. Inside of our storage, let's go to the form state, storage. We should have condition plugins, and here's our values right here. So we'll just copy this. We're going to say form state value equals form state get conditions. Now this should work. So let's hit stop. And let me get my database hooked up really quick. So I'm going to copy that port, and I should have access here. So let me get it configured. Oh, that's a SQLite database, which is not what I'm doing. Here's the apply, switch the driver to the more appropriate one. Yes, to all. So I want to get the promotion table. Promotion conditions. So right now we're on 3, and where entity ID equals 3, we'll just focus it. So I'm assuming we're going to get a serialized configuration. Like we should end up with values in here, but there's no configuration. It's empty, which means the conditions are broken, but it's a start. So if I refresh this, it's going to submit the form for us. So we set value for element. Let's step into it. I'm going to step up so we get the value. So our value is null. That didn't work as I thought. Fatal error. Of course. So nothing should have updated there. Let's go back and figure out what happened. What went wrong? I'm going to close some of these. And let's see here. Let's do values equals form state get conditions. That, because I swear that had values before. All right, so no condition will be applied. Let's do customer email. One thing that it should probably do is reset that. So let's do a on new condition. Form state set value for elements to do clear condition. Just make it a to do, because that way, like once you add something, it should go back to choose. So we have a condition name. Let's click save. So values is null. All right, form state storage. Oh, condition plugins. I forgot I changed the name. So there we go. I'm going to hit stop. Luckily, that means I can just refresh, resubmit the form, and it will run the code. Values. We have the target plugin ID. Let's click save. And if I go refresh this, that did not save. I wonder if it's because it had invalid plugin IDs. Let's see. So it should be saving. And right, I know we're not configuring anything right now, but honestly, getting it configured is the next step. The main part is being able to just even submit these field values. So we've got submit conditions, which sets the form value, conditions table, which extends conditions widget, and has massage form values. And I bet that's why. So let's override massage form values. And a lot of times, instead of just like writing code, I like to just override the method, put a breakpoint in, and study what's going on. So let's do just that. So we see in here, values form, if is not is set value plugin. So I think we just need to, we have to override this because we already have the values. So let's see, let's do customer email, because maybe we can just even have the, let's see, all right, there's that. Because maybe what we can do is even just have the configuration form show up in each row, and then eventually try to hide it behind like an edit and remove, and we could add a table drag that rearranges things. We could do a lot. So let's click save. So our values are form, add new, and no conditions at first. So now we go into here and we click. All right, so it is just it is just form values form. So let's just return values form because we're massaging everything in. Let's hit stop. We'll resubmit the form. So now I want to step into the rabbit hole a bit. So our values inside widget base, that's not great. So it's like we need to only return a value if after the set value for element has run. So values form. So we could add, what I'm going to do is to do only return empty array if the add condition, the add new property exists. If that exists, we didn't process completely yet. So just a little note for myself. So now I'm going to step in. Our values are here. Step over. So if I look at the item, let's see, items, that's the field list 0, values, order email. Great. So our first value is set. If I press play, it should show there. It should bring us all the way to the end. Yes. And now, if we go to promotion conditions, we'll see for 3 and a DID equals 3. We now have order email with no plugin configuration, which isn't great, but it's a step forward. So that's actually really cool. What we should do next is I want to try instantiating like a default configuration. So let's do, we'll do condition ID equals values conditions ID. And we have plugin manager, and we'll call it instance equals plugin manager, create instance, condition ID. So we'll have this be condition ID and have this be instance. We need to assert that the instance created, because it doesn't have like a return type. So this is a condition, assert instance of condition interface. Yes. And this has to be default get configuration. So we'll try this. Configurable interface. Condition plugin base. That's for core. Well, we did. We already knew that. So when we wrote this, when did we write this? When did we do all this? So let's do a git annotate. So 2017 is when we wrote the commerce condition. Because I first wrote commerce promotion condition, which was a conditions interface for promotions. And then we moved it into core to be reused everywhere else. This was 4 years ago and rules didn't exist. Not summer 2017, which means that I wrote, let's even go, all right, hold on. Options, view, let's see, showing git log, hold on. So yeah, so that was 2017. Let's look for here. Oh, that's going back to even before. So I wrote commerce plugin condition probably spring of 2017, because that's when I first wrote the promotion system. And rules was maybe just doing it's like crowdfunding then. So we knew that we were basically rewriting rules in our own rules engine, and we wanted to use, I first tried to use the conditions inside of core, but it just didn't work well. Because it was very much tied to blocks. This core condition API is neat, but we were limited by it. So we had to write our own API that was like in between where core and rules lives. But what we're building here is something that's like the rules UI where you click add and then you configure your conditions. That's where this came up. Somebody was like, I really like how rules worked in Drupal 7 for all these things. This new conditions UI is a pain because what if you want to do an order range? Right now, you can't say order total must be greater than 20 and less than 100 for a condition to apply. You need to create a new plugin that is a range. So the idea here is that you could order them and say, okay, is it greater than 20? Yes. Move on to the next. Is it less than 100? Yes. Okay, this applies. So that will be the idea behind all this. So actually, you know what? I wonder if we can do that now. Before I get ahead of myself, I just want to see if this little ditty I added gives us some default configuration. So let me try to move one step at a time. But it's wild to think that, it's what? It is 2021 now? Yeah. 2021, that was 4 years ago. That was I had one kid. Now I have three. Drupal Commerce is old. I'm old. I just turned 33 today. So, that's just wild to think it was so long ago. Scott, I think that's before I officially even met you because that was before DrupalCon Dublin, or it was the same year of. You had hair. I had less gray hair. I don't know if it's coming through, but I have quite a bit of gray hair, but I have my hair at least, I guess. I'll take that. So we can remove this breakpoint. It's okay, Scott. You're still beautiful. We have our values. I'd never heard of Nando's. Nope. And I still dream about going back to the UK and getting some. Although I think we have some here in the United States, but maybe in New York or one of the bigger cities. I don't think there's one in Chicago yet. But if there is, I'm vaccinated and ready to get some food. So I'll have to check that out. Shoot, I completely missed the fact that I wanted to check if we have the default configuration added. So let me just add another rule. So conditions. Oh, that's right. Yeah, and Rob, you're a huge times contributor then too. So thank you for all of your initial contributions because I remember those early days. Same with Joshua Taylor out of Australia. Huge, wrote a bunch of tests for us, all this stuff. We had some really great initial contributors that helped just get the initiative going. As we got our feet wet, as it was kind of getting, I was doing Drupal 7 stuff, and then it was just Blaine doing Drupal 8. Commerce has been fun, and a lot of diehard and good contributors throughout the years. All right, so I added some code here that created the instance and got its default configuration, which seems to be a good idea because now we have an empty roles array. Before it was just an empty array altogether, so I think that's a good step. Some of this code could be cleaner, but we're working on it. Right here, I could just do create instance and then have it be instance get plugin ID. So that way it's just working off of the plugin. So I'm going to hit stop. And we now have this user interface. One thing I want to try, because getting to configuring this stuff might be a little bit harder. So I want to just have a little bit of fun with a few things. And then I usually do these for about 2 hours. So there's half an hour left. So maybe I should I want to see if I can get a table drag to work. So I'm going to do the table drag first. So type, I think it's actually table drag, table select. No, how do you do a table drag? I don't remember. Table select is false, tree, table drag. Here we go. See Drupal attach table drag. Let's see if we can get this to be reorderable. Reorderable, is that a word? Table drag. Oh. Is there a simpler version of this? Because I don't. All right. Action, order, relationship, sibling, group, weight. I don't know. All right. Let's just look at this here. So type table, header. Oh, weight key. Oh, so we need to add a weight to the individual ones, which is the delta. Build row. Is set row weight, row weight delta. So we'll copy it into here. And row, this build row. All right. This made it way more than I was expecting. But let's do this. So this would be the name. Let's just call this configuration. Settings. People don't know what configuration is to developer. We'll call it settings. Yeah, so now I need to add a weight, which will be which we will do weight for copy the label, and default value will be as delta. Whoa. Now the only problem is that if you add a new one, it's going to reset the weight. So this might not be that smart of an idea, but I'm just curious to see if we can make it work. So we have weight, because even if it's in the user, so if it works in user interface but doesn't save, we can find a way to make it work in the user interface. So then we have to add an attributes, which has class, and the class array is draggable, right? And then weight, we have to assign the default weight. And that is the delta. Okay, let's just see what happens when I refresh. It's a good guess. So everything's a guess. Is guess and just see what is done in core. Or usually what I do is like, what did we do in commerce? You know, actually, I'm silly. I bet if I were to go into our product module, needs a JS lib. I don't know. It should just do it automatically. We'll find out. So I don't see. It should automatically get added by the render element. And if I was smarter, I would have gone and looked at our attribute form, because this has a values form, table header, table drag. Well, shoot. Yeah, if I would have just looked at some of this, which breaks file fields on the value form. This table is used for visual group, and only the element itself doesn't have any values that need processing. So value form. So there might be more that I need to do inside to do it to this based off of how we have the attributes form working. So for those who don't know what that form is, I will show you real quick. So if I edit color, it is this form right here. So essentially, I probably need to copy a lot more because we'll be creating something like this. And if I would have looked at like add value, possibly could have, oh, entity form. Possibly could have copied a few more things in here. But let's go refresh this. So yeah, if we look at the table element, and if we look at the table drag in here, doesn't actually show this. Where's so there's this Drupal attached table drag, which find usages. So inside table pre-render, if there is a table drag, it attaches the library for us. So we don't have to. So let's click, we're going to add a customer email. Ooh. Well, that's not what I was hoping for. All right. That's going to be way more involved than I expected. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to back this out. And that can be something that's done later on, because that's looking like it's going to be a lot of extra work. So the main thing is just to get, this added. So let's get the form in here, and we'll see how well that works. So what we can do, instead of it being gated behind like an edit form, we will do it as a so this sets the value for the element as conditions, condition plugins. I want to set that. I feel like this is going to get really wonky, but so what we should do is now I want to look at the original element again. So I'm going to do source element conditions. So there's the submit. How do we build the form? Inline form manager. Okay. That's right. Commerce has its own version of inline entity form via the inline form manager. That's mostly for plugins and would be a good baseline for inline entity form 2.x. So I'm going to go, oh, table drag, kill this. So inline form manager, we want to create the inline form. Oy, oy, oy. So, good golly gosh. All right. Create instance of plugin configuration. All right, we need to make a plugin configuration instance. So inline form is here. The plugin ID would be the condition target plugin ID, and is configuration. And that resets the parents. Oh, this is hurting my head right now. Do we need to have this set? It sure looks like it. So let's call this, we have the inline form, then we'll call it the plugin configuration form equals an array. And how did we have it in the number formatter form? So we'll do, that's just inline form equals the inline form, and parents equals element parents. We'll say that. Oh wait, actually it should be an array merge conditions, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. I'm just gonna add it in there. We can adjust it. At least it's something different. Inline parents, and then you have settings equals. Why do we want to set the conditions? Because I want it to be the values to be nested under conditions when we fetch the values and when on submit. I think we'll find out. Because I don't want them to be nested directly underneath the main form. Honestly, I'm winging it, so I don't know. We want this to be assert inline form, this instance of plugin configuration. Build inline form is off of plugin configuration form and form state. So, all right, I don't know. We're going to see what happens. When I click customer role, see if it explodes in a fanciful fire. So we get to conditions there. Now the main problem will be built some inline form stuff for entity queue was about there. It got so lost in the data structure. It's lots of trial error. Then it worked. Yeah. That summarizes life with a lot of this is like just try it and see what happens. Some conditions form conditions. We're setting the value. We're setting it there. And we probably got a 500 error, which is why that dropped out. No, we got a 200 error. Insert null. Why is it? Something broke. And it's not telling me why. All right, for each conditions, which conditions? Oh, what? Why is it? Element condition plugins. That's why I changed. I changed the name of myself and it broke. So I'm just going to try this out. And also that the parents array is what modifies the input names on your form. So the value here, this name of, let's see. So it has conditions, form, add new conditions ID. The parents array value is conditions, comma form, comma add new, comma conditions ID. So I'm putting all the condition configurations into its own area, which this might actually break the ID. I don't know, but it is kind of put in its own bucket. So that the JS can attach the new element. No, it's just so that way when it's submitted, it's in its own form name, which should make it easier on the submit configuration to pull out the data, is my idea or my thought. So conditions is 0. All right, so we set it there. Now we have conditions. The form. So element, I just want a quick look. Element. Condition plugins. Rows. Settings is an array. Oh, come on, why? What is going on here? What did I break? Oh, wait. Element condition plugins. Rows. response. Why does this have no response available? Let me turn off this here. Click add. Is something dying? Because it says it's a 200. We have our page state here. We have all the data. But the response has no value. Oh, called an undefined method. Undefined method, plugin configuration render. Oh, what? Why? In table. Oh, crap. I know why. When you do a table in rows, if you return a render array, you need to set it to data. Tables are weird. Well, they're not weird. It's just when you do tables and you return this, it should be a string. It's like here, I'll just do data, and I could do markup. And let me refresh. I always forget that part. When dealing with tables, the row cells can have data and they can have other like magical keys in there. This is one reason I wish we could move away from render arrays to render objects and have like fluent setters and getters. This would make things a little bit simpler. Kind of like building widgets in Flutter, where especially now that we have in PHP 8 how you can like name the parameters. So then it would be just like writing widgets in Flutter, and I would be super excited about that. All right, so let's add 2 customer emails. Let's say foo@bar.com and we'll call it baz@bar.com. Let's save and see where we end up. Well, I didn't have breakpoints set. I had it turned off. So my concern is that in the submit configurations, it did form state get condition plugins. And that saved the old data. So if I go back to promotions here. So it saved the 2 items, but it didn't copy in my configuration because I have it saving from the wrong data. So I'm about to get real excited if I get this, mostly working at the end of this, which I consider this to be mostly working. So let's add the email again. And before I start trying to add too many of them, that's interesting. When I click on it, the label's not working. I wonder why that is. Label. Oh, why is the label detached? I don't know. Same with the input type name, input type email. This has no name attached to it. So I wonder if it's due to my where'd it go? To the element parents here. Let's look at this build inline form. Enforce unique parents. False. I don't know. But that's not good that it doesn't have a name. I guess the next step is to debug it. So why don't I just set the element parents to be the main parents and refresh. Because without those, then I can't get it to apply properly. So let's do customer role. And allowed roles is empty there too. So it's building wrong. Something's going wrong. Step in. Why did it not even... Did I do step over? Oh. All right. Stop. So build inline form. So inline form, the parents is conditions and forms, which technically is not correct. So inline form, then we get inline form. We have container, edit conditions form. Run submit. Plugin. So the inline form, rules, checkboxes, options, title. So if I step through, then we have inside our element and row condition plugins, rows 0 settings, data is the form. It might be due to the fact that we're in a table. I bet. And the table is rendering our render array outside of the form, so it's not rendering it properly. So yeah, it's due to the fact that it's inside of a table. And to prove that, let's go to table, pre-render table. So data is element for each children. Do not render a cell for children of type value. Turn second level elements into table columns. Well, somewhere it ends up rendering it. Template preprocessed table for each column, header, column span, header, rows, if is set row data, cells, if not empty cells. So content, where did that even come from? So content equals cell data. So it ends up getting passed into this content and then rendered by Twig, which is not a form builder. So that's why it had no data in it. No name, because it was rendered outside of this form context. So that means I need to borrow more of what we did in the product attribute form. So, like I said, there's always lessons to be learned, and Boyan went down that rabbit hole. He built that form. So what I should do is I'm going to write a to-do. This is causing the inline form to be rendered in Twig. Does not work as we have no form rendering. So it is then in the product source form, product attribute form. There we go. Build values form. I'm going to copy the reference and do a C and note we need that for waiting and dragging. All right, so I thought we get it close, but I think it got pretty close. We got it to the fact where it's showing we can add individual, and it's just not rendering complex forms. Let me turn off Xdebug. So I think probably in one more session I could get this done, which isn't bad for if that's 4 hours. But the cool part here would be that you could do total price. And of course, so you could say greater than, it's not fully rendered and everything. So you could say greater than 20, but less than or equal to $100. So it has to be within this range, and then they get a discount. Right now, you can't do this in the current user interface. So it's pretty close. It needs a little bit of work to get this form to render right, because it's not being rendered in the form builder. It's being rendered by the regular render system in the Twig template. Again, if you're wondering, like, how do you know that? It's just time and experience. Because I know that it's being put into the render array from the form, is being passed into the table element, and the table element is being passed into the Twig system. None of this is being rendered by the form API and processed by the form builder. In this product attribute form, it's being handled correctly. Here, value form entity. So I need to review how Boyan did this before, and maybe then, well, not maybe, then it will just work. So there's a few things I can do there. And then we could get table dragging to work out. And one thing I do want to do is just kind of compare it to what we had before, or I guess, yeah. So if I let's see, if I comment this out, and I don't have Drush CR. So if I disabled this module, let's say, this is the form that we would have. Should have killed Xdebug. Which usually isn't a problem, but I think lately I've been having issues when streaming and getting Docker to run. It's just been a drag. So if I flush the cache, which again, I'm rebuilding the cache so it sees that this change is ignored, like I'm commenting out my alter. And then when I refresh the form, we'll get the old version back. So maybe this is what I'll work on next Friday. I'll pick this back up. I hope this was cool and interesting, in that it helps some folks understand how some tricks about Form API and Form Ajax. It's a wild area, especially if you're doing some more complex things like that, where you have a field widget that's calling an element that does Ajax operations to embed more sub elements. But this is the original form, and the idea is to make it, instead of it being this wide selected item, it's more of a, you add and you build a conditions list instead of turning things on and hoping that you've built it the right way. So I hope that was educational and fun. I'm pretty excited about it, and hopefully I'll probably just do this again next Friday. So on Friday, yeah, so next week Friday, same time, 3 p.m. Central, which is like late UTC for the European folks. So like, Scott, thank you for hanging out and spending your Friday night here. So yep, thanks everybody for tuning in. I'm gonna go have some birthday cake. I'll catch you later.